And we are seeing the incredible results. As a result of our massive tax cuts, and everybody is benefiting and everybody is happy. And the Democrats are very concerned. You watch how well we do in 18. You watch. You watch. Get out and vote. Don't be complacent. Kanye West must have some power, because you probably saw I doubled my African American poll numbers. We went from 11 to 22 in 1 week. Thank you, Kanye. Thank you. You just saw the recent poll. It came out, the Rasmussen, 51 or 52. It's the highest level I've ever been at. How does that happen when you only get bad publicity? How does that happen? Democratic lawmakers have voted against legislation to close deadly immigration loopholes, like catch and release. How about that one? We caught them. Oh, release them. Bye-bye. We're going to keep the violent criminals out. Senate Democrats like John Tester. You saw what happened there. What he did to one of the finest people in our country. What he did to the Admiral. What he did is a disgrace.
He went on to expound on the subject of gun rights in a speech before thousands of Second Amendment supporters and thanked them for their patriotism. Watch this.
The true American patriots of the NRA who defend our rights, our liberty, and our great American flag. You have never stopped fighting for our beloved Constitution. They said, you know, going to the NRA convention and speaking today, that'll be very controversial. It might not be popular. You know what I said? Bye-bye, got to get on the plane. Because we have to do the right thing.
All right, we'll take it around the table. Greg, he was having some fun today.
Yeah, I always use the metaphor of he's like a classic rock band who does hits in front of a loving crowd, you know, like the Wall is his stairway to heaven. But he introduced some new hits. The Kanye is a new song. And the best part, without question, is the John Kerry material that he introduced, which was stellar comedy roast. When he talked about, you know, when you're 73, you shouldn't be riding a bike, and about how he fell off the bike. It was just perfect stuff. And I always find it, I mean, this to him is entertainment for himself and entertainment for others. And it's I guess it's an antidote to the news, because when you're listening to the news, all you're getting is the bad news. You're getting the stormy stuff and the collusion accusations. But when he gets up there, what he does is he talks about the job numbers. He talks about North Korea. He talks about the good news, which is the antidote to the bad news. So it's kind of healthy for him, and it's healthy for his supporters, and it's actually healthy for people watching at home to see the other side.
Well, and if you're watching Fox, I don't know if the other networks took it live, but we did. And so it's, in some ways, I mean, the bully pulpit really is very powerful. If you're going to give a speech in front of a big crowd and you get a chance to watch it, it means a lot more than watching any sort of newscast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfectly produced, and I think a good plug for your book, And the Good News Is, right? So he's leading with what the good news is. He's changing the dialogue and the narrative because the media won't give it to him, so he's going to take it and take charge. So he's very good when he's at these campaign rally speeches or in front of a group that's a receptive audience that kind of, you know, they're picking up what he's dropping. So it's perfect. He really feels at home in a situation like that as well.
I actually watched it in a room that had MSNBC and CNN on it. And there were a couple of interesting things. First of all, it's the president's only time with unfettered access to actually communicate his message. But I was fascinated because there were cutaways. There were times when the audience was applauding, and the audience would, you know, Donald Trump had stopped speaking for 15, 20 seconds because there's so much applause. Fox News went to cutaways of the audience to show what was actually happening in the room. CNN and MSNBC, no cutaways. There's no way they were going to show that audience. But let's remember, going into 2018, it's about getting the base enthused. And that's the problem. He spent a whole section of his speech talking about the enthusiasm level. And you better, if you like your Second Amendment rights, you better get up.
It's a good point about the midterms, Juan, going into them, that it's never necessarily easy for a president in their first midterm. They usually lose seats. And even though his approval with Republicans is high, probably highest that it's been, maybe like I think it's 88%, 90%, that doesn't always translate into enthusiasm and getting out to vote. And do you think that was part of his ploy today?
Oh, it's clear. If you watch the speech, that's clearly what he was saying. Don't be complacent. I think we just played that clip, Dana. But so what was interesting to me is if you consider the midterms, you look at the poll numbers have turned in favor of gun control very strongly. And after Parkland, remember, the president was in the White House. I think we carried it here on Fox, having a meeting and saying, you know what, I think we need stronger gun control. You guys, he says to the others, you guys are afraid of the NRA. I'm not afraid of the NRA. And of course, then about 5 days later, he flip-flops. But nonetheless, he is trying to make the case that he is the man who the NRA poured $30 million into during his campaign, and that he is still the NRA's friend. I think after he got elected, he said, you know, you are with me, and I will always be with you.
Were you surprised, Greg, they didn't talk a little bit more about that? Like, he said he was willing to go to challenge the NRA, but I think one of the things that the president does is he says, well, that makes sense, and then a couple days later, it's like, oh, wait, now I understand why, for example, arming school teachers might not be something you can do nationally, that will have to be decided on a case-by-case basis in the districts. I think
that the blessing and the challenge of Donald Trump is he's like the first conversational president we've ever had. So he'll just talk about anything. And if A happens, he'll talk about A. And he goes, you know what, that upsets me what just happened. And then if B happens, he'll go, well, wait a second. I mean, he went on a long tear on how if one person has a gun, lives would be saved in areas where there were no guns. And it's, you know, there's a CDC study, Center for Disease Control study, that was not published that supports the claims of 2 million plus defensive gun uses. And this is an important thing. My thing fell out to talk about. So he did it. But I always get the sense that the speech is essentially the same, and then he tweaks it depending on the, it's for the NRA, so he drops like 10 minutes of that in the NRA. But that was, I think there was a stock positive speech about deeds. Overall, it was about deeds in the face of what you get from the media, which are words.
Well, you know, I think the whole gun movement, the NRA right now, is on the defensive. Gun sales down. Smith & Wesson are the ones who I think are saying, you know what, you know, they also outdoor brands. The outdoor brands make Smith & Wessons. Their stocks are down. Remington's in bankruptcy. I think there's a sense that you have a Republican in office, so it's not driving the gun buyers to the gun stores, which is what, you know, they said Obama's going to take your gun. Well, now nobody thinks that.
You should be happy then, because that means we've saturated the market. Everybody has their guns.
But what strikes me is that so many people, including teachers who are clearly opposed to carrying guns into school, including suburbanites, are saying, you know, in the aftermath of Parkland, maybe something should change. And then that brought up what I think was the controversial issue regarding the president's speech today, and also Vice President Pence, which is the Secret Service said no guns in here. And so you get people, even NRA supporters who are attending the convention, saying, wait a minute, they don't trust the good guys with the guns? How can that be? Well, you can see why so many Americans would say, of course not. You shouldn't have a gun around the president. You shouldn't have guns around my school.
There were plenty of people in the room with guns.
Yes, there was.
Secret Service agents are not the audience.
Talk about one other thing the president discussed, and it's Greg's favorite part. He mentioned it in the opening remarks about North Korea. Take a listen to this.
The last administration had a policy of silence. Don't talk. You may make them and him angry. Don't talk. If a horrible statement is made about the United States, don't say anything. We have no comment. Please, please. Oh, my God. And we have the former administration as represented by John Kerry. Not the best negotiator we've ever seen. He never walked away from the table, except to be in that bicycle race where he fell and broke his leg. Learn from that. At 73 years old, you never go into a bicycle race, okay? Just that. We're saying, this is going to be nuclear war. We're going to have it. No. You know what gets you nuclear war? Weakness gets you nuclear war. Being weak gets you nuclear war.
One of his strengths, Jason, I think, is that he uses humor to then make a point. His point being that you, being strong against your enemies will bring them to the table, and that's actually how you bring
peace through strength. Do you remember when Barack Obama, he said he was big into skeet shooting, and they had pictures of him out there, you know, pretending to shoot skeet. And then you had John Kerry supposedly out, pheasant hunting. Nobody ever bought into that. But Donald Trump, he has this authenticity that connects people, even though he's
funny,
this
he doesn't, and he doesn't pretend to go and do that, right?
Yeah, he doesn't fake it. Yeah.
No, this was great. I think for him, he felt like he gets back into his element, to his groove. He right away, this is something coming in the aftermath of the Parkland shootings. He was able to go in front of the NRA, which is taking a lot of criticism lately. There's a lot of people trying to abolish the Second Amendment, get after your guns. He went straight to them, to the crowd, because he then invited people to the White House to have this discussion too. And I thought that was important to show that he's listening to both sides, people who are concerned about gun safety, gun violence, and then going right to the group that's trying to protect the Second Amendment. So I like it. It's right up, in your face, and not afraid to answer questions and talk and get to the issues.
So I think he's got to do something with Republicans, because, you look at what happened in Florida, and you're looking at other states, some with Republicans, Kasich in Ohio, but you look at Vermont, you look at Oregon. More and more Republicans are saying, yeah, we buy into the fact that most Americans now overwhelmingly want some reasoned gun control. It's not about taking anybody's guns away. I don't think anybody's talking about that.
Well, a lot of people are talking about
No,
that.
I don't think
they
they
are. They're
I think
saying
they try
abolish the Second Amendment,
No.
that this is excessive. There's laws on the books
John
right now. They just need to be, there you go.
No, I think former Supreme Court Justice Stevens said something
He
like that
did
in
say
an
that.
op-ed. But it's not the kids, it's not the Parkland kids, and it's not most Americans. What you're seeing in terms of the 60+% who want more gun control is better background checks, maybe an age limit on who buys long guns.
But if the Democrats take the House with Nancy Pelosi in charge, and that's exactly what has happened, they will do everything they can to take away guns. And everybody knows
don't you think, though, Jason, that would work against them? Just politically, if you're thinking, Nancy Pelosi might want to do that. But as soon as you're done with the midterm election, we're talking about the general election.
Correct.
And if Nancy Pelosi were to do that, how do you want to make sure that Republicans really turn out in 2020? Nancy Pelosi should try to pass gun control. I mean, and that's part of the reason there's frustration that Congress never gets anything done.
Can I return to that video that we played of him talking about John Kerry?
Yeah.
If you noticed, he did the panicky man impersonation, which is when he moves his hands like this. It's a lesson for all of us that it's not specific to any particular person. He does that.
But that's not the same thing as what
Yes,
you're
it
talking
is.
about. It's
You
the
look at-
exact same thing?
Pretty much, pretty close.
Okay. I didn't plan on talking about that. All right. Before taking off for Dallas, the president spoke to reporters directly about whether he'll agree to a sit-down with Robert Mueller. His answer next.
And a little bit of chicken fried, cold beer on a Friday night, a pair of jeans that fit just right, and the radio up a lot.
Another new twist in the Stormy Daniels saga. President Trump weighing in on remarks made by his attorney, Rudy Giuliani.
So Rudy knows it's a witch hunt. He started yesterday. He'll get his facts straight. He's a great guy. But what he does is he feels it's a very bad thing for our country, and he happens to be right.
Giuliani releasing a statement today clarifying his comments. He says his references to the timing of the payment to Daniels do not represent the president's knowledge, but instead his own understanding of the matter. President Trump also indicating that he may be willing to sit down with special counsel Robert Mueller.
I would love to speak. I would love to go. Nothing I want to do more because we did nothing wrong. I have to find that we're going to be treated fairly because everybody sees it now, and it is a pure witch hunt. If I thought it was fair, I would override my lawyers.
And a win for the Trump team. A federal judge rebuked Mueller's team today during a hearing for ex-campaign chair Paul Manafort, suggesting they overstepped authority by charging Manafort with bank fraud crimes unrelated to the election interference matter. Congressman, I know you are very up on this and interested to talk about.
Yes,
Yeah.
because this scope memo, 2 weeks from now, it'll be the most said word and phrase across the country, scope memo. He's challenging the authenticity of what the special prosecutor is doing. He's challenging him to provide this memo. It's a memo that Congress has been asking for and has been denied. They've been given the stiff arm from Congress. But now you have a federal judge who gave him a 2-week timeline, and they really pushed back. Mueller's team really pushed back and said, well, you can't look at this or that. And the judge rightfully said, I'll be the judge of that. So they've got 2 weeks. They're on the clock. and they need to provide that document.
Yeah, Dana, this is a big win for the Trump team in terms of they wanted to be able to find out, understand the scope of it. So now the Steele dossier lingo is replaced by the scope memo.
Well, I think it's a good day for the Trump team. I don't know if it's a good win because there was nothing decided today. It was the judge saying to the government lawyers, basically brushing them back and saying, you're going to have to do better than this. But then apparently this judge has been known to be toughest on the lawyers for whom he then ultimately rules for. So who knows? I don't know what's going to happen and what the judge will decide. It was a very good day for the Trump team in this regard, or for Manafort's team, I guess. I mean, I actually don't know why you defend Manafort. Like, why you want to be a part of it. Like, you think this guy wasn't, like, basically the swamp? He was absolutely the swamp. But it's
because they're using the idea of Russia in the election to go back for decades and surf who knows where.
We kind of know what the scope memo says, and that is part. This is certainly controversial, but it said matters to Russia and other things that arise. And other things that arise is that they happen to find all of this stuff with Manafort, and that's what the indictment. That's why the grand jury returned the indictment.
But it was such a wide net, Greg, in terms of what they were trying to do. That's why there's distrust by the American public to say, what really was the purpose and intention here of doing this? And if you don't have anything to hide and there isn't anything nefarious and you're not on a witch hunt or trying to unseat an American president and undo an election result, why won't you show us what's in the scope memo?
It's like black mold after your basement floods. That's what this investigation is becoming. It's just spreading and spreading. And those questions, I know, were drafted by some Trump lawyer, but they were consulting with Mueller's team, and they were all about feelings and thoughts. What did you think, and how did you feel? It was like I said, more like a Match.com application, and it was about to pick his brain. And I think we've gotten to the point where it's almost like a parody, and we should just stop it and just realize that there's so many good things going on in this world that this is actually basically like a playpen for people who are still mad that he won.
My goodness, my goodness. All right, Juan. So look at Juan's face.
I'm always amazed.
Bewildered.
So as I understand what happened in court today, it was very interesting. I definitely don't think it was a win because I think nothing was decided. But I do think that it was an opportunity for people who feel like, hey, this is like the federal government run amok going after some president that maybe they don't like. And so what the judge says is, we, the American people, don't like unfettered power, no matter who it is. And then you get Mueller's team then responding, hey, we're not exercising unfettered power. We are part of the Justice Department. And Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, is always with us in terms of ongoing negotiations with regard to the scope of what we do. The counter from Manafort's people is, hey, wait a second. When it came to Michael Cohen, you sent that case back to whatever the district here is in Manhattan. But with Manafort, you have kept it because originally the charges were going to be filed in the Eastern District for Virginia. But you've kept it because you're trying to get leverage over Manafort so that I think he said, sings like a bird or something. What do you say, sing?
So, yeah, to go after Trump.
To go after, right. So he says, well, so I want to know more about the scope. And then there was this wonderful moment when he said, when the Mueller team was saying, hey, we don't want to show you this scope document because it involves ongoing criminal investigations, international in some cases, and he does the old NFL thing, which is, come on, man, you better show me that thing. So we'll see where it goes.
All right. You follow all that?
No.
Okay.
That was boring.
We just want to keep the thought police out of your head, Greg. All right, the confrontation between the Trump administration and the media, it intensifies ahead, and Greg gets punished during the break.
Hey there. President Trump continuing to attack the media while specifically focusing on NBC News. They had to correct a report about Michael Cohen being wiretapped earlier this week.
Virtually everything said has been said incorrectly, and it's been said wrong, or it's been covered wrong by the press, just like NBC and ABC yesterday covered the story wrong. So, but you'll be finding out. It's actually, wait a minute, it's actually very simple. It's actually very simple. But there has been a lot of misinformation, really, people wanting to say, and I say, you know what, learn before you speak. It's a lot easier.
The president also going after NBC News on Twitter. He claims the outlet's sources, quote, probably don't exist. Meanwhile, White House correspondent April Ryan, she's raising some eyebrows over a comment regarding her exchange with Sarah Sanders.
Blindsided. You said yourself you were blindsided.
I actually didn't use that term.
Well, I said it, but you were blindsided from what you said.
Well, with all due respect, you actually don't know much about me in terms of what I feel and what I don't.
21 years to understand how this operates.
All right, I think we're good. Lolly, go ahead.
She was blindsided. This was not a personal attack on her. And for her to say something like, "You don't know me," that was very street. I know there's street politics here, but that was very street.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. So, Dana, what do you make of this?
Of which part? I mean,
well, let's start with NBC and the president.
So the NBC News broke yesterday during the daily briefing, and so on that show, we quoted and cited NBC News with this as being the one that had broke that story. No other news outlet was able to match it. And
ABC said they matched.
Well, but no, they matched something. They don't match the exact wiretapping and a pen. And looking at who's calling in and who's calling out is different from listening in. It's very, very different.
Correct.
And I think it's inexcusable and it was certainly unnecessary to go forward with that story if they weren't absolutely locked down. And it's embarrassing and it's just completely unnecessary. It's bad for journalism. Mm-hmm. It was bad for the Trump administration for about 2 hours until it turns into their favor, showing, look, once again, you guys get it wrong. Now, there was a FBI investigation. We know that the FBI was looking into Michael Cohen because we know about the raid. And Michael Cohen says himself, they were very professional when they came in and dealt with me, but they were looking at the outside of the envelope. This goes back to the whole thing that we talked about for years about surveillance. It really isn't surveillance if you're just looking at who's calling in and who's calling out. On the other thing, this is a little strange to have watched the briefing yesterday. I was on air twice in the afternoon on my show, Shepard's show, and then on this show. I guess that's 3 times, defending Sarah Sanders. What she said yesterday is she was surprised by the Hannity interview, what Giuliani said. She said to the reporters, look, I give you the best information that I have at the time. Right. That's what April Ryan is referring to. I do think that Sarah Sanders then today is almost vindicated again because it's actually the White House who is having Rudy Giuliani reissue a statement to say, oh, actually, I had that wrong the day before. So there's just a ton of unnecessary, too quick information going out there that's not solid. And everybody just wait for a second before they put it out there.
Congressman, you know, what's interesting, I think, here is the initial report from NBC seemed to raise the likelihood that Cohen's degree of legal jeopardy was really heightened, that they had him talking, including potentially talking to someone at the White House. Now what we understand is it wasn't that it's probable cause that he committed a crime, which would have been the justification for such a warrant, but simply that there's something going on in an ongoing investigation and it's relevant and therefore the judge grants the warrant. Do you see that Michael Cohen is, in fact, in greater legal jeopardy now under the new understanding of what this report is, this Penn registry?
I think the media totally undercut itself. I think Sarah Sanders is wonderful, and I think she did the right thing. But Cohen's problems are much deeper. If the FBI had the authorization to go get a Penn register, and I've argued this for years in Congress, they also then probably got the authorization to track geolocation. They argue, the government will argue that if you're just, you know, it's not just a phone call between this number and Kimberly's number, they are then also tracking.
I didn't talk to anybody. No, nothing.
They are also going to track your geolocation. And my argument was, I think this is unnecessary. It goes too far because if I can tell you, Juan, exactly where you've been every single point of the day, then I know the content of your life. Yeah. It is not just the metadata, it is the actual content of your life. And if they have been tracking not just who he's calling, but where he's going, that's a whole different thing.
So, Kimberly, what's so interesting was that April Ryan said that Sanders got street with her by saying, you don't know what I'm thinking, you don't know how I feel. Sarah Sanders said she was misquoted.
I mean, come on, right? I mean, it's enough already. Sarah Sanders, it's enough already for me. I've had enough. She's very professional. I think she handles herself very well, has been stated by my colleagues here, based on the information she had at the time. There's no need to try to come out at her. I'm sure she's had enough too, you know, in terms of what she had to endure at the White House Press Correspondents' Dinner. And now they're saying she's straight. I'm like, all right, let's pump the brakes here for a moment. And let's all just be professional. Let's do the best job we can, including NBC, that needed to get it right. That is actually a big misstep in terms of, you know, journalism. No offense, but do you see us have to do that and take it back at the Fox News channel? No. No, you have to be careful with information like that. Sarah then addressed it. and she made sure that she got it out to them. She's been available. She's been transparent. She's answered their questions, and that's it. And as far as Michael Cohen, just go to the Upper East Side.
So, Greg, can they have a kumbaya moment at the White House between April and Sarah?
You know, I think it's interesting because I said this before. For Donald Trump, everything's a conversation. For the media, everything's a deposition. Right? So they have to part. If you sneeze, they want to know what your sneeze meant. And so now what we're seeing, and we saw this in this segment and in other segments, we are doing segments about tiffs and arguments and oral conflicts and stuff. But we're not talking about deeds. And this is driving me nuts because if you look at today's news cycle or you look at this year's news cycle and compare it, it's dramatically better than the news cycle before Trump was in office. We're not talking about ISIS. We're not looking at ISIS videos. We're not worried about a nuclear threat from North Korea. We're watching job numbers just, 3.9%, breaking 4%. So you have to ask yourself the question, we can sit here and talk about these dumb little fights. I'd rather talk about that's good news for all of us. I go back to this choice. Who would you rather have, a wholesome incompetent to lead the country or a cad who brings world peace?
I don't know.
I do.
A cad.
I'll take a cad.
I think we have a cad, but I don't know about world peace. Remember all that violence at Berkeley last year when a conservative speaker came to campus? My goodness, you won't believe who the school is now blaming for that. That's next on The Five.
They call me Jane. That's not my name.
The Who? I'm impressed. It's all the conservatives' fault. That's the stunning determination by a panel at UC Berkeley about those violent riots last year when conservative speakers came to campus. In a new report, the panel says, and I quote, although those speakers had every right to speak and were entitled to protection, they did not need to be on campus to exercise the right of free speech. Some of the 2017 events at Berkeley can now be seen to be part of a coordinated campaign to organize appearances on American campuses likely to incite a violent reaction in order to advance a facile narrative that universities are not tolerant of conservative speech, and they're proving the point with this report. You don't need to be on campus to exercise your free speech. Conservatives, stay away. Don't be part of it. Greg, are we raising a whole new generation of snowflakes?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't say that word. But you know what?
This is where he went to school.
Yeah, but you know what? It is this is the home of free speech. That's now the home of intolerance. And I go back to the point that we said yesterday, which is it's not just about speech. What did you notice about that whole long comment? How humorless it was. And the fact is, what you're seeing is the death of humor, not just the death of thought or the death of speech, but the death of humor. And if you can't have fun with somebody, then you can't actually communicate with somebody, and then you're on the road to no communication, separate groups, and then war.
Juan, what do you think? Do you
That's what
agree with
happens.
Well, so I was reading the report, and what they said was that they feel, especially in the aftermath of the 2016 election, that you get people, and I think they cited Milo Yiannopoulos and Ann Coulter and some others, who they see as saying intentionally provocative right-wing statements that then prompt people to protest and all that. They said, for example, Ben Shapiro, the conservative commentator, had come in 2016, no problem, he's very conservative. But when he came in 2017, then they had to have the security and there were 9 arrests or something like that. So they say there's something that has changed on the right, but I don't think the right wants to take any responsibility. They just see this as a free speech argument. But I think that when you get to dealing with people like Milo Yiannopoulos, I think you understand he says some pretty awful things.
Well, what do you think, Kimberly?
I think what are universities teaching today but oppression of free speech, conformity, and groupthink. So they can try and demonize conservatives or people that come there to speak. They should be interested and listen. That's the whole point of having an education, is to hear different arguments, learn, grow, stretch your mind so you're not somebody who is just like myopic in terms of your viewpoints. And they want to blame it on conservatives. This makes me sick. I'll tell you why. Because what about personal responsibility? Is somebody making the Antifa pick up stuff and stab horses and throw, bottles, light on fire into police cars and disrespect personal property and businesses that people have worked very hard to make? No. Take ownership of the situation and don't behave like that and show respect for other people.
So, Dana, do you Can you exercise your free speech by not showing up? That's what they argue.
Well, I mean, I think that's what they want, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
like, just don't cause us any hassle. We don't want to have to pay for security if somebody says something that might hurt the feelings of a student. I think that college seems like it would be quite a bummer.
Yeah, but there's
It's like fun back in the day.
There's a double standard here. Of course, there are right-wing people who say awful things, but they didn't build bombs. Bill Ayers is a professor. They made a bomb maker who tried to kill people into a professor. Okay?
Well,
that's not speech. That's deed.
That wasn't my fault.
No, I blame you, Jason.
You looked at me the whole time.
I'm mad at you, Jason.
the side like fisheye.
Yeah, I'm not used to that. Stay tuned. Fan Mail Friday is coming up next.
I'm excited. Yeah.
That's not the Who.
Yeah, you know it.
That's the what?
The Who are an overrated monkeys. Fan Mail Friday, we have your questions. Let's begin. This is a great question. This is from David Dawkins. Who was your biggest childhood TV crush? So you're a kid. Juan, what was your TV crush?
You know, I was having trouble with this. I can't remember the actress's name. I Dream of Jeannie. I thought
Barbara Eden.
But the thing is, I always saw her as an adult. It wasn't a crush. It was just like, that's a fascinating person.
It was. She had a great outfit.
But in general, I think most of my crushes come from movies, you know, and I really like strong women like Angela Bassett, or I was just going back and forth with you because I can't remember all the names, but people like Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, or Linda
You were an
Hamilton.
adult back then, though.
Yes, that's the point. That's when it was a crush, man.
Kimberly, childhood TV crush? Don't say me, because I was...
Oh, you mean
not
like from the Brady Bunch? Because you look like one of them? Yeah, no. I would say, but it was television, right? Like Sean Cassidy?
That's what I wrote down.
We always pick
But was he on
the
TV?
same. I know.
Yes, he was. He was a Hardy Boy.
Hardy Boy.
He was a Hardy Boy.
Do run.
Can you name the other Hardy Boy?
Yeah.
Parker Stevenson.
That's true, right.
Once married to Kirstie Alley. If you'd like to hear more senseless trivia, call me. What about you? So you're going to say...
I was going to say Sean Cassidy, but then I added Alex P. Keaton.
Oh, yeah. Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox.
Oh, okay.
Jason?
I did kind of dig Marsha Brady.
Yeah, who didn't?
But then I matured and liked Farrah Fawcett, of course. So
yes,
I had the poster.
Yes,
of course you did.
As did Millie. I
had surprisingly Mrs. Howell. She's a very classy lady, and she always, you know, you're on a deserted island, and she's able to dress so, you know, she had everything. She was just well put together for an older woman.
Remember when we did the Gilligan's Island thing?
Yes, we won't do that here. Oh, this is a better question, if you could believe a better question than that, from Alex G.
Go ahead.
If you had to exist in a reality based off a movie or a TV show, which would you choose? I kind of know what Dana's going to say, but...
Nashville?
Oh, there you go.
Good show. Well, I mean, it was.
Well, you could live
not
there?
A good show anymore.
You could live in that show.
I could live there, and I could live in that city. I could live in that show. I think I'd do PR for the record label because they need some help.
What was I going to? I was going to say Little House on the Prairie. I was going to say no. I was going to say.
Oh, you could live with Melissa Francis.
I thought Dana was going to say Little House on the Prairie.
No, I like Running Water, actually.
Jason?
I was right off the top of my head was be Lost. I love that show, Lost.
Oh,
and
ABC.
Fighting every day. That was cool.
That was really.
That's a great show.
That's not a happy existence.
No, but Greg,
No,
you
but I
used to
like that.
it.
I would like to fight. It'd be fun.
Yeah, you used to like that show.
Very strange man
Remember
over
we
there.
used to talk
He
about
ran for
that.
Congress.
Yes, he did.
Lost
Now he's running from
Anna.
Congress, ladies and gentlemen. Kimberly, what's your choice?
Movie, La Femme Nikita.
Ooh. Well, no, you're saying that you want to be that character.
Okay.
No, I think they're talking about the environment, Juan.
No,
What
I
kind of
think I
environment would you want to
most
live
relate
in that if you saw in a TV show? It's great. It's a very interesting
That is
question.
the environment I want to live in.
What-
I live in it now. Go ahead.
Is that a German? I can't remember. Is that
Do
Germany?
you think we're all in the Truman Show?
Yes.
I think they would just live on.
This is
TV.
simulation.
We are just characters.
So you think we're just trapped in here?
Well, sometimes I think I'm Huckleberry Hound.
I would like to live in the world of Ren and Stimpy. Wouldn't that be awesome? No, SpongeBob SquarePants and live underwater and not have to worry about breathing. All right. Oh, this is funny. Do any of you get so frustrated about a topic you just want to walk out of the studio?
That's you every day. All the time. Oh my God, like Greg today. No, come on. Someone's got to be the viewer here.
Do you know? No, yeah, somebody has to be the viewer. My point is this: I used to watch the McLaughlin Group, and I would just get to the part where you guys are talking about real stuff.
Right.
So I'm like that on the 5.
So what was your objection today?
I thought that we focused too much. Why is it about me? Because we were focused too much on words and deeds. Words, not deeds. That was driving me crazy. Little things.
Greg's a frustrated producer.
I think so.
Right? You really want to be a producer.
They're saying no more questions. Tease is next.
They're frustrated at your producing.
One more thing is up next.
That's a wrap.